I wanted to record a quick video to help answer some of the questions that you've asked me about 3D printing and some of the why am I doing this step type of information. Exporting from the CAD system to an STL file is pretty trivial. This is just the format that the 3D print systems want the files in. And at Purdue, we use this 3D printer OS system, but if you had your own printer, you might have it directly connected to your machine via USB, but this system puts the information in the cloud and really lets you send it to any machine anywhere that's connected to this system. You'll upload the files there, which again I hope is pretty trivial. And the first step that you'll do is to lay out the part. And so you click the layout button on your part here. And the reason we do this is because, take a look at how this part came in. I would not want to print this in this configuration. I'd want to position it such that it has the best chance of printing. Before doing that though, we want to make sure we have the right printer selected because we need to know how much space is on the platform of that printer, so I'll pick that. And then up here is rotate, where I can either go by 90 degrees, and these are always a little bit confusing to me. You can also drag using these handles, and I'm not sure of the exact angle on this part, but you'd want it something like this, and you always want to make sure it's on the bed. Otherwise it's floating in space and the printer will have to build up material until it gets to the part, and that's just not a good use of time. Also, we could say put it in the center here. Oops, and I left my rotate on. That's a common, if you get out of the rotate command, like go into move, it'll be sort of stuck in position, if you will. But you can also move this around. So maybe I want to move this over here because this layout is also where you could either make a copy of this part or you could add a separate file. So let's just add any old file in here, and there it is over there. So same with this. You could reposition this. You can put your parts fairly close together, but there is support material that's put around the perimeter, so leave a little bit of space. And when you're done with that and you have what you think is a good layout, you'll press save. That will generate a file with the name of the first part added plus some numbers behind it. I actually exported my file somewhere else, but here's a part that also has two parts in it. And then what you want to do is repair that. This will look for any holes or imperfections that the printer might have problems with. Again, you need to pick it for your specific printer. They all interpret this information a little bit different. I leave it to move it to the center of the build plate. It takes all of the plated pieces and moves it towards the center, which will give it a better chance of not overlapping the edges. You can also tell it to automatically rotate 90 degrees if that gives it a better chance of being successful. And if you don't care about the size of the part, if you're doing just something for fun, you can let it resize. Typically, if you're doing this for a project or a prototype, you don't want it to auto resize. So I set those three options. The printer, put it on the center and orient it such that it thinks it's the best way to print it. You should receive workflow finished. Sometimes it fails, in which case maybe you should take one of those parts off the plate and unfortunately you have to start over again. Once you have two parts in that file, they get merged together and become one part, so that's a little bit unfortunate. Then you get a file with some numbers behind it and this STL magic fix suffix. Then you're ready to slice it. And again, we need to tell it which printer that we want to use and which spools. There's different types of material. There's PLA, there's ABS. The lab uses 3mm filament. It also comes in 1.75. So all of that information needs to be given to the file so that it knows how to make the layers to print out. This platform adhesion is that perimeter around the part that it will add. And if you have any geometry like at an angle here, I always keep the supports on. I'm going to show you the slice and toolpath preview, and it's working here. Sometimes it takes a good while depending on how complex your part is. And it's going to show us a preview of all of the layers that the printer is going to print. You can think of it kind of as a hot glue gun. It's going to put a layer of material down and then offset, and then put a layer of material down and then offset, and repeat that process again and again. So this preview can be helpful. And so it's giving us a preview of what the printer is going to print out. And we can scroll through each layer. The first layer, it's a little bit hard to go layer by layer. All this pink is called support material. It's adding an offset perimeter here to help the part stick to the build plate, especially in a case like this where the part is very narrow and doesn't have much material touching the build plate. This is very critical or it'll tip over and not stick. And then it goes layer by layer, and this is showing you how the material is going to add up. And keep in mind again, all this pink is going to be removed. And it's there because when we get up here, that geometry that's on an angle, let's go all the way up, it can't just float in space, right? You can't just make the printer pass over this area and expect that material to float in space. It needs something to hold it up. So that's what the supports are doing. So previewing it is always a good idea. And then you can select to print. It doesn't matter which TAS 5 or which mini you select. I'm an admin, so I have the ability to print it directly, but you would want to put it in the queue. It'll put you in line in the order your job was submitted, and when that printer is available, it will print it. They can move these files from printer to printer, so they try to balance and not have one printer with 100 jobs and another one that's sitting idle. And of course, in here is any notes that you want to add for the printing lab. You can buy your own personal spools of material, in which case you would say use the spool from probably your username. If you're printing for a class, you would add that note here. So that's where you add that. It's a little bit hidden. I wish it was at the top of the screen, but again, this is software we purchased, so we don't have a whole lot of control over that. And you would submit to the queue. And I can see all of these files here because I'm an admin, but you would see a single line here with your username, and it would say in queue, aborted like this. And if it finished printing, which this printer doesn't happen to have right now, it would say finished. So I want to cancel that. If you realize that you forgot to do something or did something wrong, you can just cancel it. And again, because I'm admin, I could set it to notify the person whose print I was canceling. But that's an overview. Hopefully that helps out when you're sending to the printer in the future. And if not, don't be afraid to reach out to the printing labs or myself to ask for help.